That's why, na.
So, if there are any questions, any kind of questions, not particularly related to our discussions about emptiness.
But sometimes it gets too much. So doesn't it, I mean, where is self-compassion and maybe taking yourself away, or maybe how does that play a role? If you are the one who's responsible for taking care of your suffering and the other one suffering and being compassionate for everyone on this earth. But sometimes when it gets too much.
Tene Quran tiwa de dir tangan zoi tagi ani chamning ji ani chanju ji sem ra tende ji semje tende kechimbo yemba song ro as anda de la inde zamba chanju gi sem la tende da ji ani susu la ju la che go yana sra de gi da goba la na ra de ani nganso gi da susu gi ani kordo yobe dwari ju semje tamje ra ani de dungye la nar shin yodu zamba dungye de le tewa ra ani dungye de le tarwe che do susu gi bego re la ge ani ta tende kowa do jire do as ta ina ya kai la yi nganzo ta ngusum pa susu mezena la sonlo tong yo nas ra ani ta dungye gi narwe ani semje la du zamba ta thakor ra sangma la ani semje mangbo ji ta dungye gi nor de ras tema se sosoyani tena shi kowa gi dungye na la khorshin barwas chezani ta chanju gi thedawe chanju gi semji chego yonasra ani shinda gi da dungye sangma soso gi thangdo lang gorwas tende la la ni sosoya ani thawarana shi gi dungye tende ji la nyongshi de zambasra soso la ti samsam ani absuma de ado ani yithang che ro de yong gorwas tela de zamba ani soso gi yang soso la yang 다제라 나 지종 제거로 왔어. 아니다 dinyi ni chik phazu genda do chagi do was samsam. Shingi dungye thangdo lang goya. Soso la yang chik jijong do che goya. Chezan depe ni dis kale kamo do regi do was. Di ni nganzu khandres donne che go yes.
Dire ta marazu loje chechung la legra. Loje chinju jina ani ta soso gi dungye macho ga na mi shenba gi dungye chile kale khabra. Ta pena ngazo tanda sanju semba ngazo loyu la tezi shim kawra pena jese sanju semba duzugi rangi kale teda pa sha rangi kangi teda ra mi shembe gi kangi de tang de len tela ropa che ra da tela ti gi kangi gi done che ra na gawa che tende gi che ba ngazo tando ale gawa che pa se dra tando ale susu gaji dugo mi shemba di gawa turle ne ngazo logi ta chande ngu chogore mi gi sanu ta da mra 가시긴데 bagage tro시 치니래 가시나 소선 거 맞다면 미 칸데 친 삼이 근데리 초워라 니네 지단게 란족이 셴라 살마 땅나 랑게 강게 칼림 카르모 카르신 충중로 책다 랑 카르모 동에 카르모 카르 미치기 동이라 나도 미 마음부지기 동에를 제도에게 내가 지투나 라 랑게 동에 라시기 충주로 책이라 페나 아마질라 페샤와이나 라 아마 코라나 저기 동해 유나야 아마디 부고들 또 부가시잖아 부고도 저기 나와이나 거기 동해 코라 템바지기다 파길 째와 차라시니라 ngata nanna ki pu tsana nga nanna disala ni tregi lo to chemuda ta duzunga zo pechen chinjujira ta jese chanje chamba to koyege dungela nadini ge sunje duzuge dungye de tanda le ro ra tende loje chemu di dungye de ngi khud le thusa sang loje le gora ra ine tanda camera chan ka tu tu chi su che ma to ine ma tu ne uzu je ne shoju de chi go ma ra
So now this is indeed true that if we kind of really think about it from the outset to develop an altruistic intention and then to try to approach the altruistic intention by applying it in our daily lives, then immediately there is a cause for discouragement and a cause for becoming maybe demotivated if we kind of take it in this manner. But when we are talking about generating the altruistic intention, then we are talking about the effect that the scope of motivation has on our sense of suffering, on our sense of personal suffering. So for example, first we need to recognize that the altruistic intention which willingly undertakes the task of alleviating the suffering of others comes first from that recognition that I myself do not want to suffer. So it doesn't mean that you forsake all sense of personal fulfillment and so forth, because first it comes from that recognition that you relate to others personally, that I myself do not want to suffer and I want to be happy. Then you relate this to others. Since they are also human beings, sentient beings, then they are also the same. So it comes from that recognition first, and this is important. And now, when we are talking about the effect that the scope of motivation has on the sense of suffering that we experience, then someone who is truly generated such an altruistic intention and really applies this in their practice is what we call a bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva is really indeed able to undertake that task of alleviating the suffering of others at the expense of their own comfort, of their own at the expense of their own personal sense of comfort and so forth. And that is the task of a bodhisattva. And once you are able to generate such an altruistic intention, then there is a sense of joy that they derive from undertaking this task of trying to alleviate the suffering of others. So maybe immediately when we look at, when we hear such a thing like this, it might be hard to relate to it. It might sound beyond us to be able to do this. But this is not the case. We need to be able to look at our own experience to know that this is indeed possible, that the scope of motivation has an effect on our sense of suffering. For example, if our scope of motivation is profound, vast, open, then our own personal sense of suffering becomes mitigated when we face suffering. For example, when we begin to empathize with the suffering of so many other people, what happens to one's own personal sense of suffering? It becomes mitigated, that so many other people are suffering that you do not really no longer have that pronounced sense of personal feeling. So that's the effect of the scope of motivation. And then, for example, as we already discussed before, when we are talking about the example of the relationship between a mother and a child. Now, how exactly is it the case that a mother is able to kind of make all these sacrifices, undertake all these adverse conditions and challenges onto herself to ensure that the child grows up healthy, well-rounded? How is this possible? So this is possible on the basis of the scope of motivation that she has developed. Her motivation is not concerned solely about her own well-being. Her motivation has opened up to include the well-being of the child. So as such, she doesn't mind undertaking the task of facing the challenges of raising up the child. So that is the kind of practical implication of developing an intention or a motivation such as the one of awakening mind of bodhicitta.
Chini ngazo endeli da sama ya batang ina ra susu ga sanya sa ro ona susu la kade chimo do da ra ona susu yu sta chashin gi chena li da susu yi do wa da mi khande tinde ji gi chi da zum kale chi kale jeni kale khayim da ra 아 그 단노 수수가 되 로바치 알아서 니 그게 강에 데 투수서 가와체 쪼제 다 수수는 저와시라메 조제 라체나 그 내가 지원도 강에 데 이어 봐라 강에 저도 sensicha 안다 그건 대하는 게 말아 나 가진 치고서야도 든데리다 다 딜레 메르바 심바지 샤인 소설은 안 된데 바치 데 다도지나 아 다데 콜로 파 로바체 데 저와체 파샤시 다 따따르 콜로 든데지 주는 디샤서 로 든데리다 세상은 저기 파길래 지투 마투도 소소기 셈라 파길래 저어요 마이 와 샴베기로 그 동에데 테나사다 안에 대화다 테나사 로디 슈 첼을 라리다 와 소소기 파 메와이나 아니 스티가나 산타운데 칼레 라시 카이다.
So herein, I will advise you to think about in this manner by relating it to the manner in which we identify with the interactions or with the relationships that we have with people, and look at the scope as well as the integrity of the motivation which informs these interactions. So let's think about it in this manner, that we have people to whom we are attached with. For example, those we call our near, close loved ones. So if we have to do something for these people, then due to that sense of attachment that we have towards these people, we do not really mind doing things for these people, for their sake, to help them overcome something, to help them overcome some sort of challenge or struggle that they are going through their lives. We do not really have much problem. We are able to do it because our motivation at least is open enough to think about their welfare, right? Because of a sense of attachment, which is mixed with a sense of love and compassion for them. Now, think about people whose relationships with you are not that close, you are not quite attached to them, and you do not really pay attention to them. And if we have to do something for such a person in our lives, then maybe we have to think twice about whether we really want to do it or not, right? Because our motivation is not open enough to include them in our concerns. Now, take this further and look at the third degree of separation, wherein we begin to become adverse rather than apathetic. So, someone who we do not particularly like, right? So if we do not particularly like this person, then if they are suffering, instead of coming to a place wherein we are able to say, okay, I'm going to offer him the help, him or her the help she needs, maybe it is our reaction that, okay, this serves him right, he should suffer. So why is there such a difference in reaction? We realize that this difference arises from the scope of motivation, intention, which dictates or which defines whether we are able to place them in our concern, in a place of concern for ourselves. So this is the manner in which the scope of motivation and the integrity of that motivation practically influences the manner in which our experience of trying to help someone or the challenge that we face in the experience of helping someone is defined. Yes.
I hope I find my words. I know we said that all people want not to suffer, but I think there is evil and there is bad people in the world. You can't deny it. So I feel like these people
Tini mo itiwa dilagit. Ta nganzogi mi sangma ni dungi norde resra koanala. Ani mi sangma dungi narde yue chansra mi khashi ngone gi semding tis napoda ra. Ngone gi shiga tsubuda ra. Duja dende ngone yongudwas. Ta nganzogi thona na chena khoranso ngone korang dungi gi nar yore do samsam gi semba do chiche. Ani tela chi ningji gi yudo samna ya sam choge yoro was. Ina ya mi dezogi soso ani dungi gi nar dewa ani sorge yo mares ra. Ani mi khashi ngone gi choba chongbo ani mi la tsewa chiken ra dende yonggo do was. Ani di nganzogi ta samlo tangna chabjung ro dende che yo mar was. Kainsana ani phajo de la ani ningji ra. Chigi yue samsam rawa chine penta ya robo samlo chi tana yasra phajo gi tsula tsowa da samshi ro chikha mene tele do ne ni tsula nuse chi ge nyanga shu chimbo yo mare bes
re chidang ge re ta tende yo ra mi kashi chidwa chidang niji che yudre kola kasna korangi dende chiki me marunga ji chagwe de karan 원저기 나치 돌아시는 거 레랭양바기 안기다 고 딘데 차라 봐 딘데 질라고 다 그런 경험 한마기 레랭양바기 사이는 단도 쭈버쭈보다 직 밀라 늦지야로 공양양양 안데 체디 디 바차이 단도 디 치용어 콜로 지당이 니지제 유레 이내야 잠잠한 저기 딱 콜로 니지제 유리를 디 쇼를 도에나 소소를 늦지야 세야 두양인가요 디디가래야 콜로 니질로 땅아요 말해라 이내야 소소 잡에 있지대야 내가 때스 요거야 돼 누구라 봐 당한 희지 제기들은 소소세나세 돈도 파이 줘야 돼 스칼에 가버라 봐 아니 이내야 배도 걸었다 거다 가르치는 제라로 땅에 마임배 나 그런 있던데 지 자주도 좀 장 주변에 야드네 들러져 줘야도 갈리 콜 지서도 소야도 따야도 개점버라 네
So I can understand this because generally we all have come into contact with such people. But to say that maybe it is pointless to kind of develop a sense of compassion towards such people is misguided. Because from the Buddhist perspective, these are actually the perfect objects of compassion. They are most deserving of our compassion. Because even though they appear to behave very badly, and they engage in harmful actions and harmful behaviors, we have to understand that from the Buddhist perspective, they themselves are under the influence of their karma as well as their afflictions. They do not really have control over who they are as a person in this life. So as such, they are most deserving of our compassion, and they are indeed the perfect objects of our compassion. Now, with that being said, we have to take practicality into account. That if we ourselves feel that we are in danger of being harmed, then it is important that we find it within ourselves to be able to kind of avoid these kind of peoples, not to try to interact with them when you feel there is a danger. But even when we do so, we cannot let go of the compassion we have for them. If we let go of the compassion that we have for them, then that doesn't make sense. We still have to have compassion for them, but practically, if you feel that you are really in danger of being harmed by such a person, then maybe it is better to avoid such people for the time being. And maybe there are many other methods through which we can try to help such a person. We have to be kind of patient with them. We have to be able to listen to them, and then we have to be able to kind of console them in their moments of weakness. And if we are able to find it within ourselves to do this, then maybe they can change. But if you feel that there is indeed a danger, it is better to avoid it. But that doesn't mean that we give up being compassionate to them.
카투 로바 제마투나 에라 칼랑 콜라 촌차데 틴데 데네 소소링이 가라 이네 그런 니지기 미바 니지체세 유차워라 타코 니제 타코 경험한데로 지글레가 노트 지월 때는 거라 제와 데네시 타치 ля친 지월레샤스라 다들은 다데 코랑이 따면서로 지기 타치 랴체웨나 chuba duwa kuma chaba khara jagena duja jichewena kyawa shumadle nyawa dogo yegi jidu sogora tende indu kola nganzo ta ki maru same hiji jita chewora kerala hiji chesagi shi chawara kerala gyawasa yegi jiya chawa wa.
So then even if you cannot directly help such people and you yourself have the fear of being physically harmed by such a person, then as part of our practice, we can begin to look at them as objects of our compassion, deserving of our compassion. And we begin to not to look them at these people as evil or bad people, absolutely bad or evil people, but begin to look at them from a different perspective, that indeed they are deserving of our compassion because in this life, karma and afflictions dictate his behavior to be like this in this life. So as he continues to engage in this kind of behavior, he is now accumulating the causes and conditions for suffering in future births. So as such, they are most deserving of our compassions. And you begin to kind of pray for them. You begin to hope that they are able to realize that what they are doing is wrong. And in the process, you are also developing your own altruistic motivation, and you are also gaining merit. And then if you can, you should also be able to dedicate this merit to help such a person.
Mi marumba chigla tene churala kesanji mamboleda ra pagile hije tene suzu gyawasa che mid marumba ji thu ne o nga ende nawe mejesan su tamja sha ra nga de mitsen nga tene tsawani de chigimese susu yar ta ya ku duaji ku khatu de duare de kyo duatele yan joa dile mini kira ya bozo ya mamachta ra ko goleni na de ko ra tachi.
So we should be able to take these kind of interactions and experiences that we have in our personal lives onto the path of our own spiritual practice, because they give us the perfect tools to strengthen our spiritual practice. And when we meet such people, it is important to kind of look at them with compassion, not with disgust or hatred or a sense of fear. And then to let such behaviors serve as an example for yourself to develop the resolve and the restraint not to engage in such behaviors.
Yes.
How do you reconcile this thought process when you are just sort of profession, like lawyers or maybe judges, you deal with criminals? How do you inculcate compassion towards criminals when your job is to decide as per their deeds and as per their karmas as of the basic needs?
Then Quran gitiwa dita tedawa desra ne tendegi ne nganzogi tacho dendeji gor songros midela ne dugna bet dugjare samayo mare le nyonchi chenji ne ta Quran gitiwa dendeji long ne chuba ra dendeji la shujin tegiyore sambura songros ta nganzogi Quran roina tiwa diguyungutu ta nganzo timbunda timzu ba인데라 ne tendegi lega chinge inasra 아니 내가 호랑 다가랑 왔어. 미를 팀 제대로 왔다. 미기 나니 사이나 나니 텔레파베 팀 제고로 왔어. 아니 디따 수지요라. 아니 간저기 팀기 시다스라. 팀기 조당당스라. 아니 디따 수디 겐다 레기요레 니니 파라라 투뭉기요라. 팀
ali mid depena tane miduadla ta tumgana team tunje chigra ra tade dide o koranga zaga landa lusuge jekho zatim do ndabne yura ra ko ben meji seyena ko le team dia ko maji khoyena ko dinde che ani chigja chinji chena ko telepabe koranta jekho zatim lo yura ra ti nga zogi chama chipa mare ra ta ine ya ta timodele dide kalo
팀변다 팀즈바 이나 양스라 딘데기 나게 진지나 콜라다 미두가 레라네 타요 마레라네 간저기 딘데 삼마탄 거로 와 이나야 내가 거랑 다가랑 팀 제고로 왔어
네네 그래다 디키 내가 디인디가라 팀제바들라 그거야 보라 라그 마음 봐 미체 약부 차에 치 그는 예바치 땅을데 땅에네 마음 빨라 딘데 무서야 치 라 콜라 다가지 코미 두자레 콜라 찌 강에 테나테 두자라네 약주 제바 지보 마임바 다리니 거기 강에지 태워 들라테네 나수 주포라 콜라 니 제바 제와나 동와이나 하르준 마음 빨리 코야 보차야 치더라 디저고에도 베케침브라 라 아니 tunjibaina thambo rasa so ko peke chambra ko chitangi ji dujarlane chile gepage pe dungde mabota ane maso chera ko timun rata khare ne tegara chi kera noti di chere ne noti di chere chera cheba dira thambo rasa ro cheda di chere kora maum pane ya bo chaya chidra tinde zo go ke chambra ya ko ta nga zo chu khele la ko name ta shana man drawing ngara ba team de go.
So the same attitude, I think, can be cultivated within the sphere of the court, within the sphere of criminal justice. For example, when we are talking about justice, now justice seems to be established by the law of the land, and this differs from country to country. But there is a common thread wherein we begin to understand that if you commit a crime, you will get punished for that crime. Now, what exactly is the point of levying such punishment on a person? This is not to brand the person as a bad person or an evil person. This punishment is a means to make the person come to their senses that they have engaged in something criminal and to change their ways. This is the whole point of the criminal justice system. Yes?
Where does my compassion add?
Exactly. So we are getting into it. So as a lawyer or as a judge, it is important that we approach anyone who is convicted or who is accused of any crime to first approach the proceedings with integrity. Integrity means honesty, not to kind of work with prejudices of saying that this person has committed this already. So the court proceedings decide whether he has committed it or not. Now, even in the case that the court proceeding decides and rules that this person is indeed a criminal, there still should be a place for compassion from the lawyer as well as the judge to effectively communicate to the person that this does not effectively mean that you are a bad person. This means that you have engaged in something wrong, and as such, you have to face the consequences. And in that, by learning to take responsibility of your own actions, then you can overcome that criminal mindset wherein you begin to think that you are free from the consequences of your actions. So there is a place, there is the need for compassion, integrity from the side of the judge as well as the lawyer to explain to the accused, to the criminals, that these proceedings of the court do not make them a bad person. That ta moi di la war mila thikchu chinge do ta tinde chinge ra dezo mi dugja roas ra en konsola ni dugja re le na mala na khande re gi ora
Didi chi chitangi duja tsigo ra team na la dogore kashi zongam tsuyo do tende yora ra duje ko chesa tayi nganza ngel dosa dere mi duja yin sa ani ko ni je go yu di chaido ra mi yapu chila nganza ko pusun soba chila nganza ni je mda ko duwa ji de sano duwa choba duwa ta ko shatsa lega dine notu chigdu dila gora ma ko gi chiju sama yapore ko le joju chogo lawa mata ra ni je yu jo ine ko na mi ta na shay de lawa mata ine chana nekabla dinde ji de mi ji tuwa ine yoya kecham boresra ha khate cha tugo mara dinde lawa gora ma chitangi dinde duwa chamala rawa zo free shasha lawa mara.
So this does not mean when we say that we need compassion for criminals, this does not mean that we do not care about what they have done, the crimes that they have committed or not. What we are talking about is the place of compassion and the need for compassion in all aspects of life. For example, who exactly is deserving of our compassion? And think about this. the people who are good, doing well and so forth, they do not find themselves in such situations to be facing the proceedings of court and so forth. So as such, they do not really need our compassion in these instances. But in these instances, even though they are rapists, the court decides that they indeed engaged in such an act, but we still need to look spiritually to these people as objects of compassion, as deserving of our compassions, because they are most deserving of our compassions because they have lost their ways.
How do I express compassion towards them? What are the means of expressing?
We already talked about it. We already talked about it. To be honestly able to communicate to them that what they did was wrong, and as such they have to face the consequences of what they did. But this in itself does not mean that they cannot overcome the kind of criminal tendencies that they have in the future. So if we...
When you say you should love yourself and you should be compassionate towards yourself, what are the means and what are the ways? How are we going to do that to ourselves?
the moi tiwa di la
Compassion towards oneself.
tene moi tiwa shindaji tigi isra ani nganzo gi susu la yang ningji gom gore isra susu la yang chamba gom gore sungu yoras ndi chamba gomba gi gomdang gi tab yora kanje yora bes
소소 샤마 다니라 소소소라 샴발라나
tadi kuran zu chi shegi da namji
답변은 가서 지 거래는 가서 사야 도야 거래 지어야나 소소를 지부 지어더라 다 샴발라고 했나 가시다 지 소소기 대부분의 지도 사야로 다 조부의 지도 거야로 소소를 지태지 지어라 샴발라디다 대화도 채나 잠바도 등에도 채나 잠 근데 질로도 여러 안 들라 나 대화 여러 나 지부 여러 채널로다 나 등에 마으로 채나 사야도 근데 요 초기 지렸어
탑 간제도 지쳐 그랬어 탑
소소라 지부 뭐야 지다
소소라 chamba gome 소소라 닌지 gome라 탑 가리다 이랬어
소소라 닌지 고메 탑 텔라시임 소소라 닌지 고메 탑은 제도 다 소소 등에 마요에 치데 가르치고 라요라 라 다 등에 마요에 치데 다 소소 내가 가르치고 있네 라 노트메 봐 야포 내가 가르나 탐보다자 짱마 짱자지 지어 있나 결혼을 가게 이거 말아 라시기 천한다 칼로다 대화 유에 유지로 차거라 라 시시데다 파페다 드네 왜기 드네르니면다
So now, from the Buddhist perspective, when we are talking about love and compassion, we understand love as the wish the wish that you develop for someone to be with the causes of happiness. Simply, the wish that you have to see someone happy. That is what we understand as love. And then with regards to compassion, we understand compassion as the wish to see someone free from suffering. So if we understand this, then we can begin to understand what exactly do we mean by self-love and compassion for ourselves. So basically, compassion for ourselves and love for ourselves seems, now if we understand this, seems to refer to taking care of ourselves. Taking care of ourselves spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And what we actually do, most of what we actually do is to ensure that we are taking care of ourselves. Now, we seem to lose the focus, the importance of paying equal focus. We seem to lose the importance of placing equal importance on all these different aspects of emotion and so forth. We sometimes place too much importance on the physical well-being without taking care of our emotional, spiritual well-being. So this is what we mean by self-love, compassion for ourselves, to ensure that we are not actively contributing for us to suffer more, we are actually accumulating the causes to be happy. Yes. Yes.
Compassion doesn't mean that justice won't be served. Justice would be served, and while serving the justice, you could be compassionate. That is how I understand.
I didn't quite get that.
My question was, I'll tell you honestly. When we read these texts, what do they say? That bad karma, bad deeds of those persons made them do it. Right? If I'm sitting as a judge, so should I be thinking that these were his bad karma, that he murdered or maybe raped somebody, and I should be compassionate towards him just because of his bad deeds or afflictions and whatever he was suffering from, and now he has perpetrated the same on another human being. Now how should I see it from that angle? Obviously, as a judicial officer, or maybe as a lawyer, you're supposed to be compassionate, right? As a doctor also, you should be compassionate towards your patient, right? But how do I see it from that perspective? I just, read one verse which says, that person should be a spiritual teacher. When I'm sitting on the chair as this person who's judging his acts, how can, I be spiritual and he can be my spiritual teacher? I'm asking from that angle. I have to do as per law, right?
Yes, of course. Of course.
Right. And
Yes.
obviously there is a certain angle and degree of compassion when you're reaching out, when you're giving punishment to somebody. You're taking an angle, obviously you can't do 2 plus 2.
So your question now, if I get it correctly, seems to be along the lines of in making a ruling as a judge, then if compassion plays a factor, then does it...
If I see these are his bad karmas, these are his ill deeds, then it becomes very separate from judging. The issue is this.
So exactly, I'm trying to reframe the question to see if I'm getting what you are saying. Okay, so your question seems to be that could it be the case that in criminal proceedings in the court, that if we let compassion affect our judgment, right? Let me finish. If we let compassion affect the judgment, then does it mean that we are carrying the law to the letter? This is your question.
Law of man versus law of Tsongkhapa, law of karmas, law of deeds versus, it's good like this now.
Yes.
Yes. So how should
But I get it now, your question.
you got my question now? I mean,
다 뭐이 티어 디디게르다. 만족이 미 팀지게로 왔어. 팀미 수조 팀지게로. 다 디나시에니 만족이 지금 렌데기양 삼로당단 지게로 왔어. 지 추조던 삼로당단 지게로 왔어. 다 팀라도 좀 저와 가린 임발 제에는 딜라 나니 지포 나니 딜라 법에 녀바 지포인 거로 왔어. 다디 팀기 시송네랑 저거로 왔어. 다 딜라 만족이 추조던 삼로당으로 콜라 닌지 곰거래도 어디 지나서라 니 팀기 조다 양다 버지 레기멘도 와 딘데지기 닌 가요 말을 베스 어디 튀어다
네네 다기 ngazagi dinde hije 공부를 라디가 콜라 페나 칼로 페나 카르로라 다 스페스 춘주지 샤와이나 먼저 뒤서 바바단도다 아 같이 샤무 거입니다 따뜻하지당이 파이 코라게 샤무 마거니들라 코라게 치드라 얘다 라 얘 파기 되게 플리스들라 계산해요 말아 이네 다코아 다리 샤샤라 나메다 샤샤나 나 지만에 인데 치님 코치기레 단도 코 마이게 콜라타니야 치님 뭐여라 디코게 디소고르 코 이제 따다 이제 코디 거문두산 샤요 말아 이네 단다 저게 지당이 미 두어들라 가서 콜라 녀바 땅고 이나야 르기 불에 콜라 니제지도 제여라 드닌 겨 말을 오라 가스나 콜라 코 노트 쳐들 노트들 아니 콜라 제바제여 제바제는 되고
제바제 텔라스라 아니 간조기다 최조도는 삼로로 땅내라
아다 니제 제바 맞질라네
디게 온 슈진로 태기 말베
알레레 네네 난 드네 모두 시기라 이네 치당기 제바제와 이나 아니 콜라 마음발라 드네 무야다 셴바기 드네 모조엘레 팽거라 지나가서 니지 찍을래 디가라 콜라 니바 참아제 제 땅에요 말이 니제는 샤고르나 드네도 마한도라 디디디 샤암다 이네 스로 불라코 니제 제서 유드레 라 니제라 디가라 코 나니에들라 간주 칼로 나니 메버스는 탈출래 디지 더 나마라 라
So herein we will first give an example and then see how compassion can sometimes be misguided. So for example, we'll explore a very simple example. It is the rule of it's a traffic law that you have to wear a helmet when you are riding a bike. Okay, so there is a traffic police, and the traffic police sees whether it's the job of the traffic police to ensure that everybody is wearing helmet. Now, it's not for the sake of the traffic police that one has to wear a helmet. It is for one's own personal safety that one has to wear a helmet. Now, if the traffic police, out of a sense of compassion, begins to say that, okay, I'll let it slide this time, then the person wouldn't understand it, that it is for their own personal safety that this negligence can cost him in the future. So this is an example of a misguided compassion. Okay? Now, we are now upping the stakes, going back to your example. So similarly, compassion can be misguided when the stakes are higher too. If we let our judgment be influenced by such misguided compassion, then of course, when we are talking about the proceedings of the court, and if we let the judgment or the ruling be influenced by such a misguided compassion, saying that, okay, I have compassion for this person, I will absolve him of his crimes. That doesn't make sense. The law is the law. It has a purpose, and the purpose is to make sure that the person understands the consequences of their actions. So we have to carry this forward. But in carrying out this rule of the law, we still need to have a sense of compassion for them, that it is for their own benefit that this punishment is being meted out. It is effectively an opportunity for them to come to their senses, to accept what they did was wrong, and to change their ways.
Can we see like I'm helping cleaning his karma?
No?
Can we see like this, that one, that judicial officer is helping that person who's a convict clean his karmas, clean his misdeeds? Can we see like that?
Help. We already talked about how the law of cause and effect is infallible. If not in this lifetime, in the next life.
Person garnering some bad karmas on him.
Right?
No, the judicial officer, is he garnering some bad karmas by?
I don't think so. But moi di lawar. Samlo ni tang yoresra. Penachashana. Nangye jingi mi de lasra. Ani timje tonasra. Timje tongi gi timben de gesra. Kola da korangi le nyeba sagyo deora. Le tae chido robachi yores. Chik ra. Yana niba de kogi timje yung zambasra. Ani tim kola timje wa zamgi ani timben korangi ra. Ani timben korang la digwa sagyo yorebes.
네, 시우창 두제 장부치네 개말.
라.
라. 담무 맞이니 그 노트 맞아 봐지 체스라. 딜라 단도에 터바로 따. 아니 코라 응의 산대로 된데서는 이 콜레 디바야라. 코 코란즈 그 요지데 담부 다시잖아. 그 디바이지 말.
So from the Buddhist perspective, this is very clear that in meting out a punishment, then the person is simply a judicial official, as you say, is simply performing his duty, what is expected of him according to the rule of the law. So, but as such, he himself is not accumulating any negative karma. But if the rule of the law is being misappropriated, if a punishment is not suitable to the crime that is being committed, then that constitutes the accumulation of a negative karma. But meting out punishment according to the rule of the law itself does not constitute accumulating negative karma. So it is very clear in the Buddhist scriptures that misappropriation of the law, levying punishment which is excessive to the corresponding crime actually constitutes an act of stealing from the Buddhist perspective. An act of stealing. Yes. Taking that which does not belong to you. So it is not within your rights to levy such an excessive punishment.
기당기 고랑이 떼스가 지지래 니지제서 당라 지지래 튕지체니데 그 딩겐들을 통해서라
제제 고랑디 통거
빼나 뭐라이 땡게 배샤나 뭐인가라 나라 이나라 간절로 직내바 제기 자시주나 라 뭐라이 땅한테 직 다치로 그 직세야 두가도 자시지 뒤게 가서 하거나 쇼지는 가서 콜라 니지제 그로 니제 마rum바 따뜻하게 니모베 샤와든 러시아사에게 아주 니지 직제 줘라 라 지니 그디 레가디 맞아야 치디 맞으기야 지게 다 팀을 또야 이나래 지게 다 police로 라이나 라 딜라야디 칼라나 콜로 두부타야 냐주제 지부 마임바 레ኛ바데 마사야 치라 디강고서 주에 근데 니레 줘다 라 니제 제야당 나 파길래 밀레라디가 콜로 지당 강에데 티고로 콜로 치바제야데 이네야 디코 가르치는 제주와에는 미세야 또야 담을 쳐와에는 딜리 디버츠 쳐있다
So I get the impression that maybe you see a contradiction in these two when you bring compassion into the proceedings of a court. I feel like this is the kind of contradiction that you see, and now this is not really the case. Think about it in this manner. Let's say, as an example, that you are devising a plan to harm us, okay? And now, are you deserving of our compassion or not? So now, why exactly are you deserving of our compassion? This is the question. If we come to know that you are devising a plan to harm us, right? So if you see that, okay, compassion here is not necessary at all, then that doesn't make sense. Because not only would you harm others, you yourself would undergo suffering. So that's why you are deserving, in this example, of compassion. So, but this compassion cannot be misguided, in the sense that we begin to ignore that, let it be. We cannot let the compassion be misguided in this manner. We have to ensure that you do not see this through, that these ill intention that you have developed, we have to ensure that you do not see this through in your actions. If you see this through in your actions, then this brings suffering not only for others, but for yourself as well. So this is the manner in which we can begin to understand whether compassion is contradictory or is compassion really needed in these kind of scenarios. So 2 last questions.
So the view of emptiness is that the pen exists functionally in apparent reality.
Can you repeat it?
The view of emptiness is that the pen exists in functional apparent reality, and it does not exist in ultimate reality. Right? So
I wouldn't really frame it like that. Maybe we say that conventionally we posit the functionality of things conventionally, and ultimately we posit the lack of inherent existence of things.
So in a different course that I had done,
Same.
which is the same as apparent and ultimate reality. So they said that, so you look at a tree and you remind yourself that this is empty of inherent existence. So do I have to keep doing that? Like, because the concept of emptiness is not emptiness, right? Me thinking about emptiness is not emptiness. And me telling myself is not. So what my question is that when the actual experience happens, is it a feeling? What is it? Is it like I'm seeing a movie and I know that it's a movie, and I don't know if I'm able to ask my question properly.
So, okay, let me get this straight. So, when we say that the view of emptiness is realized when we are able to posit the functionality of things in the conventional reality and the lack of inherent existence in the ultimate reality. So, in another course, it was framed differently, relative and ultimate. And then you were encouraged to look at a tree and think that the tree has no inherent existence. And that's it.
I mean, there were other things, but my question is like, what does it
What
feel
is the
like,
actual
does
experience?
it actually feel like I'm seeing a play or a movie and it's not really there, but it's also there?
Okay, so in effect, what is the actual experience of realizing emptiness? Today, Quran chiwa de tatagi nganzo gi ni tongma ni gi tawa la chora. Tongi to be tawa la de zamba ni nganzo gi thani la malongwa ra. Ni chue thamje gi thunjin ni ba ra. Kunzub la sha thu ba. Thani do thunjin ni ba sha thu ba. Thundam do ni dembar me ba sha thu ba. Tinje gi tawa ji ni bo re so ras. Ta Quran gi ni chilor.
Hidong.
Ma zinra shinda chi la nyamshi chi jo din na shindon chi la tas ra. Shindo de la ni rangan duba mares ra dembar duba mare la samtongs tede la gitus ra ta korang gi thiwa di kharsala na tongning su tonas ra di gi nyowa di khande do res nyowa di pheje ji su temota de wa do ra tinde gi nyowa da yong we re nyowa di khande res
nga to yin to ma sa ra ma me di kala nge nyo de la tung ra kala do nge sa na o di nga mu do chi mu do chi la ra ta yin nga zo ta ju ma mu tan tin de do ji sa da sa ma ji ma shi to ni nyo de ga la de te me.
So personally I cannot attest to the experience of realizing emptiness because I have not realized emptiness at this point. We can only begin to imagine what it feels like, what the experience is like.
Yima mi ji ge la ra ko to ni to sa la da mi mi ji to ni khan de to ni ho la la da ji du la ja mi le chi dan da mu de sha ge sa da so ji chen chu du ji chen ngon de sha ge ra
가시기는 날 지바 슈침보 시오지
가시게 똥바지 곰디가라 아니 ngamra shulila tabe na nganzu tanda nganzu sama ye samti paryawa chosaro jora ra ani ta dechi khae mindu sonde tati no do wor china thani de yorwa chi khae mindu ngae mindu khoe mindu khamba mindu chi khae tongpa tongsan ji gaund digal tene pe ngamra la ya tene ya chana dam leida ina ngala le masus.
So personally I cannot attest to any experience of realizing emptiness, but just as an anecdote, there was a person who was supposed to be meditating on emptiness, and he began to say that I have realized emptiness. And then someone asked him, what does emptiness look like then? And then he began to answer that emptiness looks like a blue aspect in the sky. So this is a very misguided kind of meditation on emptiness, if emptiness indeed does feel like that. But when we look at the testimony of the previous masters, and when we look at their experiences, which are recorded in the testimonies that they have left behind, then many of they kind of share the experience that it is indeed a frightening experience. The first moment when you begin to arrive at an understanding of emptiness, because the normal way in which you conceive of reality begins to dismantle at that point. The normal way in which we conceive of reality, grasp onto thing as being solid, absolute. We look at a table, the table, we see something solid, absolute. So such conceptions of reality all dismantle at that point. So as such, that initial moment, they testify that it is indeed a very scary and frightening moment.
So is it something that happens in stages, or can it, like they talk about satori, like satori, sudden enlightenment in Zen Buddhism? So is it something that happens in stages, or is it instantaneous?
Now, in the Tibetan tradition, maybe it's a little bit different from the Zen tradition, even though both traditions are Mahayana traditions. Because in Zen they talk about like sudden enlightenment, wherein in the Tibetan tradition we talk about reaching enlightenment as a gradual process. So that's why we talk about all these principal aspects of the path. One needs to cultivate renunciation steps. Moi di like the Tongni tola do the Nikonzo Nihong yora, Nihong ki Zen laneta Nangba ki lu Nangding ki lugda ujira. Tina la Nikonzo ki Tongni chikchar to tola do yora. Temata do lamsan tuichil to do yoro. Tinde gola ki Geshe ki was. Tinde do rebes ra. The Dida Ganzo Konzo Ganzo tis dragi mare ra. Nija teaching ina yasra. Nangba ina shena any chik rimba do yoba. Lamgi rimba mambushi yora. Tangbo nijung chigwaya tana Ganzo pecha dilatana. Nijung. Tine chansem. Tine any tomani gitawa la cheba chia. Cheba diya tangbo any riba cheba chegwaya. Riba gi cheba pinsun soba chetsana any tamala shini munsum to toktoba. Tinde do chungyoras.
지랑 저기 간디는 배셔나 들으나 요라. 돈이래 돼. 내가부시에 말아. 돈이 당한 디상이 뒤질래 담미자마지 단이라 저한테는 가서 강해지 시가 쳐라. 뭐또 코른번 로다 쉬우지다. 라. 단도 딜러서 칼로다 똥 회는 마루아디 로카디게 마쇼니래. 아니 지 돈이 거는 뭐시에나 슐레 쿠에 있을래 파 도야인가로 근데는 리다. 제가 산지기 추송도 산지기 다 당아들어네 키란데게 삼수 가리네 희고 말아. 근데 지 아니 찔러빠발래 저거라. 다 산지로이네 파기 두자디게 산노 위네치 가와과리 하고라. 콜 간데지 쇼도 코네. 제가 찍다 돈이 된서게 너지나 안 똥마지다. 다 베드 코라 베드 단제데네 슈쳐다치 똥바니란데 베드 코라 히 개도에 된데게 가사요네. 콜 코라는 베바타 똥보 데모트버레 똥바니 요마 엔데로 시터라 데모트버레도. 테니 칼레칼레 아니 그 로다 텐데가라 아니 칼레칼레 아니 콜 아니 똥바니 레란 떠죠. 아 지난 어저기 똥바니 드니에 터치주 신이에 시추 내지 인사말이. 봐. 언저게 칸데 배치네 자동을 줘. 봐. 돈이는 너도 말고 해요 말. 내가 저한테다 가서 지시되어.
So now when we are talking about the discussion of emptiness, maybe it will be good for you to know that in the traditional framework of monastic Buddhist monastic study, then emptiness is not immediately introduced as a topic. And there is a reason behind this. Because the Buddha himself was initially reticent and hesitant to share the teachings of emptiness, because he knew the danger of people misunderstanding this teaching. And if people misunderstand this teaching, then instead of coming towards the teachings, they might be turned away from the teachings. So this is the danger. Now, in this day and age, people are really, really interested in knowing about emptiness. So we have to offer something. So as such, we try to introduce it in an accessible manner, to try to really simplify it, and so people get an idea about what emptiness is. Because it is very kind of difficult to fit it into our perspective or our mental outlook, the normal way in which we relate to things when we try to understand it from the framework of emptiness. This is very difficult, and instead of, if we do not understand it correctly, and if the instructor is not able to impart a correct understanding of emptiness, then there is a real danger of people developing wrong views, people developing wrong conceptions, and then wrong ideas about the teachings themselves. So as such, if you look at the monastic prayers, there are specific prayers which specifically say that emptiness should not, as a topic, should not be introduced to anyone. It should be only introduced to those who are ready to receive this kind of teachings.
단단한 저기 준준은 지죠. 담시 생사더라. 가서 다되는 추놈인데 샤자면에 되게 뭐 고조고도 설명으로 삼명하다로 다도선죠. 마장 돈이 있단다. 상세마. 진짜 돈이래 로 마장이 봐. 슈점부 때 아버지 장매와이나 가지머지 때와이나 콜레 폐기 있는 데인가라. 되게 있다 까야.
So now a very famous Buddhist work called the Bodhicharyavatara, composed by Shantideva, in English, engaging the deeds of the Bodhisattva. So even in this text, it specifically says in the chapter on wisdom that the training as well as the study of emptiness should be carefully managed. If one is not ready to receive this kind of teachings and one is not ready to engage in the study of emptiness, then there is actually more negative effects than positive effects. So we leave it at here today.
Emptiness,
Emptiness is indeed really tough.
It
might be the case that when you go to sleep, if you try to think about emptiness, when you wake up in the morning, maybe you would realize emptiness. So we conclude the session with the dedication prayer, page number 31. Remoje maje banan janjoji jeba nyamba memba ya gone gonde pewa jo
Jambe pae jeda chemba dai kundo zambo deyan dejende deda kunji jizo daloche gyawa deda tanje rato tisum shibe jawa tanje je ngowa kanla chode ngabade dage gewe tsawa de gunjang zambo chijere de ngowa je pama sunjen tanje dedan denje je ngendro tanje tade tongwa tong chanjo senpa kana sujoba deda kunji molon druche chi.
Okay, thank you everyone. See you tomorrow.